This is the story of how I became a beekeeper. Beekeeping had never been like a thing that came across my mind or something I'd wanted to do or like a bucket list thing. But it really only started when I was watching YouTube one day and a video came up where someone was harvesting 120 pounds of honey. And I just scrolled by it and watched something else. And a second time it came up, went by. A third time went by. By the fourth time, I was like, okay, YouTube really wants me to watch this. I might as well give it a shot. So I ended up watching this video, and I was immediately intrigued. I thought it looked so cool that you could just have bees in your backyard. And I watched this guy called Just Alex on YouTube. I watched this whole beekeeping series about how he became a beekeeper, and I thought it was so cool. After that, I started watching beekeeping videos online. And the time I found this was about August. Now, you can't become a beekeeper unless you really figure out you want to and buy your bees by like June or July, because they don't have enough time to make enough honey by the time the year ends where I live, because they have to have a lot of honey in order to survive during the winter. Back to what I was saying, I was watching a lot of videos and I thought it was so cool. So I ended up actually ordering bees online, which is crazy because you can order them during like the winter time and then you go pick them up at a place in the springtime where they keep your bees. The kind of bees I got was called a nucleus hive, where it's 5 frames covered in bees with a queen. The way you install a nucleus hive into your real hive is by putting those 5 frames in the middle of your hive. That way they can grow into the other frames you have. When I originally started, it was so exciting every time I could go out. I remember just seeing them for the first time. It was so cool. I was like, whoa, look at them all. There were so many little bees. There was a queen. It was so cool. So many new things that I had been watching on YouTube for all winter during learning my process. I also ended up buying a class for $80 to make sure I knew everything I needed to know, and I did. So that was really nice. And so when I ended up starting, I did my weekly inspections like you're supposed to, and I kept adding more boxes as they needed it because they would continue to expand. By about July 1st-ish was when they had enough excess honey that I was able to do my first small-scale honey harvest. My first honey harvest, I did, I think it was 20 pounds on 4 frames. And I had made my own extractor out of 5-gallon buckets and my 3D printer, which was really, really fun to make. It used a drill, and the systems are really cool. I'd recommend looking them up if you have spare time. But the way it worked was by spinning the frames, which made the honey fly out of the cells and onto the 5-gallon bucket walls. It was really cool to see the honey flying out of the cells and onto the walls and into the 5-gallon bucket. And then I put it in jars, and I have been selling my honey to friends and family for the whole summer and fall, ever since I've had any. Now, that was my first small-scale honey harvest. As the summer kept going and the fall came, I did what's called your main honey harvest or your fall honey harvest. Most people do 2 honey harvests. They do one in the spring and one in the fall because there's a lot of flowers in the spring and there's a whole long time to build up more honey for the fall. Something very important, though, is not to harvest too much, because the way the bees survive the winter is by having enough food in order to eat during the whole winter. Again, I'll talk about that more toward the end. But I was able to do 16 frames, and I got 80 pounds of honey. 80 pounds! That's almost 6 gallons! For the first year, that is incredible. I had a truly incredible year of beekeeping and really enjoyed it. Now, I am excluding a lot of the cons, hard parts, and I did make a few mistakes, and during those mistakes, I was not able to keep my bees at their full size. One of my beehives was not able to get as big as it could have because I didn't open it up for 2 weeks when you're supposed to open it up every 5 days, but I thought I saw a special thing where it was good for it, but it wasn't, which was one of my mistakes. And the other mistake I made was after the fall honey harvest, where there are mites that will live on the bees, and over time kill your bees. And we made multiple different treatment things that don't hurt the bees at all or the honey. It simply kills the mites. Me and my dad, tried 3 different times to get the mites to die, and we were unable to. So there is a much smaller chance they're going to make it through the winter. Still a chance. And sadly, if my bees do end up dying, I will buy more in the spring, and I will have learned my lesson and buy proper mite treatments. But the way bees survive the winter is actually, bees make honey for a reason. You may think, oh, they make honey so they can eat it like that. But the reason bees make honey is because they eat it during the winter in order to make it through the winter. The way bees survive the winter is by rubbing their wings on their backs in a big cluster, in a big ball inside of their hive. And when there's 20,000 bees in there rubbing their backs together, rubbing their wings on their backs in a big ball, the inside of the hive can be like 70, and inside of the cluster can be like 90, which is warm enough to keep their baby bees alive. There is one thing though. They make a surplus of honey. They only need probably 80 pounds of honey where I live, and they could make like 140 pounds of honey in a year. The way I see it is, they make a surplus, and I keep the rent. The rent is the extra honey they make for giving them a perfectly good home to live in and killing all their mites, making sure they make it through the winter. So I make my rent, and they get a great life. That's how I see it. I hope you enjoyed my little beekeeping story. Also, if you want to see more detail on any of the parts or hear more about the bees or the queens or the brood, which are the baby bees, or the honey or the pollen or any part, leave a comment on what you want if anyone has any questions. Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye!